It's a term that gets thrown around a lot in professional wrestling, and yet it is rarely defined. Today, let's find out if you truly are a student of the game. It's next on Till We Make It. I'm Mike Quackenbush, and this is Till We Make It. If you are passionate about professional wrestling and you're never done learning all about it, then you have landed in the exact right place, my friend. What are you waiting for? Go ahead, join the Till We Make It tribe. Subscribe right now. Today, I want to break apart what it means to be a student of the game. No. So let's start by defining what it is not. Being a student of the game does not mean that you are an expert at everything professional wrestling. In fact, it's probably impossible to be an expert at everything. I've been at this for a few decades now, and there are a couple areas in which I have true expertise. But am I an expert at everything? Absolutely not. There is always something more for me to learn. And being a student of the game does not mean that you've amassed a lot of wrestling trivia. And trivia is information which is insignificant or unimportant. Now, don't get me wrong. As someone who loves some wrestling trivia, whose brain is overloaded with a lot of wrestling trivia, I'm here to tell you there's nothing wrong with knowing that kind of stuff. But in the final analysis, it won't make you a student of the game. What it really amounts to is knowing the answers to a bunch of questions no one is ever going to ask. Do you know when you'll need to know the answer to the question, how many different entrance themes Cesaro had during his WWE run? Never. You're never going to need the answer to that question. I think being a true student of the game means that you have a working knowledge of all aspects of professional wrestling, and I think it can be broken down into 4 categories, which we're going to discuss in today's video. Like right now. Let's go. Okay, let's start in the most obvious of places. If you are a true student of the game, you know your wrestling history. You know who the most significant players are and the era of wrestling they belong to. Mildred Burke, Carnival era. Rockin' Robin, cable TV era. And I know this probably sounds like a premature plug for my book, Pro Wrestling History, 6 Threads and 16 Decades, available right now on Amazon.com or as an audiobook over on Audible. But it is not. Well, you've also got to be well acquainted with the influential rivalries across the years which are still referenced today. They're still part of the conversation in locker rooms and in creative meetings. So you've got to know Tiger Mask versus Dynamite Kid. The Rock and Roll Express versus the Midnight Express. Misawa versus Kawada. Austin versus McMahon. Toyota versus Kong. Santo versus Blue Demon. Okada versus Tanahashi. You have to have an understanding of each of those and what they have added to wrestling history. And your understanding has to be broader than the WWEized version of events. You know what I mean by that? Because of their size and sway within the industry, the WWE often rewrites history to suit their narrative, to suit their version of events. Yeah, all their documentaries are beautifully produced and often bear only a passing resemblance to the truth. A student of the game knows there's a minimum of 2 stories behind every turn of events, every incident, every controversy, every development in professional wrestling. There's the one that's optimized for fan consumption, there's the one that's written after the fact, and then there's the versions which are much closer to the truth, which are often more nuanced and more complex than what you're going to discover online. And a student of the game knows them all. And there's one last thing I want to say about this aspect of being a student of the game. You need some familiarity with every seismic level shift in the pro wrestling landscape. You got to know the answer to the question, who killed the territories? Why did Joshi collapse? What was the fallout of the Monday Night Wars? Do you know the answers to these things? If you do, drop them down below in the comment section for me. I could use the engagement. Thanks for the help. But the point that I'm trying to make is this. Being a student of the game is a whole lot more than just watching wrestling on TV every week. The second aspect of being a true student of the game is becoming a student of the business. And what I mean by that is that you understand the difference between corporate level wrestling and the independent circuit and the international scene at large and each of their unique characteristics. You know who the movers and shakers are in front of the camera, but also the really influential people behind the scenes who shape professional wrestling. You've got to have an understanding of the economics, the revenue streams. You got to know who and what draw money and what fair market value for those things and services are. And you've got to know the hierarchy of companies within professional wrestling. Here's an example. CMLL doesn't draw as well as WWE, but they consistently outdraw DDT. That is a comparison that only a student of the business could confidently assert. And being a student of the business means that you also have an understanding of the landscape of organizations. You know that AEW owns Ring of Honor. Japanese entertainment company Bushiroad owns both New Japan Pro Wrestling and Stardom. NXT is the developmental wing of the WWE. These structures, partnerships, alliances all have to be part of your working vocabulary if you are a student of the business. In my opinion, the last component of being a student of the business is that you can understand and follow trends. And what I mean by that is you know things like who is moving tickets, what is moving quarter-hour ratings right now, who's a little bit past their peak but still on top, who's the young up-and-comer that's going to be the next hot thing 9 months from now. If you could be in a conversation that covers all of those topics and you have something intelligent to contribute to that conversation, then I think you are on your way to becoming a student of the business. Before I dive into the third of these 4 aspects, would you please take a moment right now and leave a like-a-palooza down below. If you're enjoying this, if you are learning something from this video, please leave me a like. It helps the channel to continue to grow. Thanks. The third component in becoming a student of the game is to be a student of the art. So you've got to understand the performance and the structure of pro wrestling matches themselves. And I know that probably sounds like a plug for my book, Toolbox, Building Better Pro Wrestling, available now on Amazon.com or as an audiobook over on Audible.com. But I assure you, it is not. You know I don't put the plugs in the middle of the videos. No, they come scrunched up at the end, like in the last 20 seconds. That's where they fit. Being a student of the art means you have some knowledge of the origin, the evolution of wrestling moves, what makes them trend, why they fade from prominence, how they return to prominence again with a fresh coat of paint. It also means you know the difference between the innovators, as touted by television commentators, and who the actual in-ring innovators are. And you've got to appreciate that a lot of the big draws and top-name superstars working in wrestling today are rarely, if ever, the most skillful in-ring technicians. So you've got to be able to name a couple of the dark horses, a couple of the unsung heroes, some of those amazing in-ring technicians who spend the majority of their career toiling in relative obscurity. And the final facet of being a student of the game is being a student of the culture, understanding pro wrestling culture. Why is it that the way a Mexican luchador treats and regards his mask is different from how an American pro wrestler treats and regards his mask? You understand things like why no one else on the card is doing an ace crusher-like move if Randy Orton is booked in the main event. There are so many tenets that make up wrestling culture, and it is deep, and it is weird, and it is frequently arbitrary, and it is occasionally wonderful, but you're going to learn about all of those things. And to put it all together, Being a student of the culture, a student of the art, a student of the business, a student of the game really means that you have an incredibly broad context for understanding any conversation about pro wrestling, and you possess a deep enough vocabulary to be part of that conversation. If you want to become a better student of the art, I want to warn you, this is a plug for one of my books. 7 Keys to Becoming a Better Performer, a book for fellow pro wrestlers, is available right now on Amazon.com or as an audiobook over on Audible.com, and it will fill your brain with wrestling knowledge. It's a great place to start, if I do say so myself. Appearing on screen right now is a roll call of all my awesome patrons. These videos would not be possible without their continued support, and if you'd like to join our community, follow the link down below in the descriptus, or click on that orange box that kind of looks like a letter P appearing on screen right now. There's also a video popping up, in case you're not done learning for the day.